My name's Zanetor Agyeman Rawlings. I'm actually a medical doctor by profession, with a keen interest in holistic well-being. So I like to approach the health aspect from the environment, the care of the environment, and as well as the psycho-spiritual well-being, and then the standard health. So your nutrition is important, exercise, and management of your environment, as in stress management, and the care for the environment that you live in. And this is something that I'm passionate about, because I don't think that you can actually pick one and leave the other. I think they all kind of work together in a web that makes our existence more fulfilling, as opposed to just merely surviving. We end up thriving. So that would be my main interest. At the moment, my main preoccupation would be dealing with raising funds for people who've had problems being displaced, or those who've lost family members as a result of the recent floods that we had in Ghana and explosions that led to the death of over 200 people. And it's basically been raising funds to support these people and set up an education fund. The other thing as well that I do is facilitating the networking of young people who are looking to set up businesses, or who are already set up and would like to expand on their businesses. And it's just to give them the links to the right people who have similar ideals and ideas, so that they can actually grow together. Because one of the things I find is the difficulty at times is finding people who are in sync with you when you're trying to create a business, and finding those kinds of people who are in alignment with your philosophy is usually the best way to succeed at what you do, without moving out of your alignment in terms of what it is that you perceive as the way to go with your business. I suppose for starters, my background has helped in some ways, especially within the setting of Ghana and on the continent as well. I've had the honor and responsibility of being born into my family, as it is. My father was head of state in Ghana for many years, and my mother was a very active statesperson as well. And she had a very big role in mobilizing women across the country into setting up revenue generating businesses, as opposed to just struggling to just keep the home together. And as well, providing daycare centers where they could actually have their children cared for, and providing at least 2 meals for the kids, so that the mothers could actually go out and work and generate income to support the families. Because on the continent in general, women tend to be the ones who really put in the work a lot more than the men. You know, the men are more visible, they're in the more influential positions, but the women do the heavy lifting, you know. And so seeing that growing up, and understanding that your well-being means nothing unless the community comes along with you, you know, and understanding that being in a position of privilege comes with a responsibility, where the more you have, the more your responsibility is to give back. And I grew up seeing this, and that is something that have carried with me throughout. And I suppose the thing about it is, a lot of people would say, oh, you're very humble and you're very approachable. And I think, well, there's no other way to be. This is the way I was brought up. And you don't become aloof and cut yourself off from people just because you find yourself in a specific position. And so for me, that's one of the things that people find inspiring about who I am. But I suppose the other thing as well has been the fact that I've managed to combine my profession with family life as well. And that is very difficult as a woman on the continent, especially because you're expected to really be there for the family. You know, your husband's expecting you to be there. Your children are expecting you to be there. You're supposed to help in the house. You're supposed to do the homework with the kids and all of the above, and still manage to deliver at work. And so I suppose just the recognition of that, you know, being able to do all of that. And then the other thing I suppose would be the fact that I'm a very hands-on person. I I don't believe in standing back and waiting for things to just unfold or things to happen by default. If there's a situation that needs to be dealt with and you can get down there and get your hands in there and get busy, that's what you do. And that's what I do, you know, and I bring people along. I don't stand there. I'm a believer in teamwork, you know, and everybody has something to offer. The key is finding out where each person fits into that puzzle so that you have a team that is cohesive and productive. You know, otherwise you're going to have all the people geared a certain way, and then that just changes the dynamics. You need to get the dynamics right. And that's another thing that I have managed to learn as I've come along, and that helps as well. So my childhood, my experiences growing up have all contributed to where I am and the support that I get in things I do. I think one of the things that already exists, I have a strong belief in the fact that all people, or all peoples globally, have culture, okay? And you have common threads when it comes to the global family. But as a generalization, if you actually go down to the community level, every community traditionally has the specific role of the women. In Ghana, for example, and as far as I know, many countries in Africa as well, the women have their traditional role as women leaders. So you have the queen mothers, for example, who are instrumental in various things. And one of the big things that the Queen Mother has a responsibility to do, for example, in the Ashanti Kingdom, is she has a very instrumental role in choosing who the king is going to be, you know, and she's very important in the settling of disputes as well. Her counsel is so important in decisions regarding the community. And these are things, and the women look up to her. She's a role model who's already established, and they look up to her, you know. So I think in order to actually establish a system of leadership for women on the continent, we need to look back at the roots of where we are, because it's easier to build upon what people are familiar with, what's intrinsic to people, rather than trying to impose something that does not connect with who they are. And so I think that's a good starting point in terms of where to look at the establishment of leadership potential in women. The other thing as well, I would say, is that we need more women in the political arena and in the formal sector of whether it's business or anything that, you know, has anything to do with income generation or leadership, because women have a valuable role, but always tend to take a step behind. And therefore the input, you know, we're finding ourselves in a situation where the masculine has kind of gone out of balance, and the role of the woman is not being seen in the level that it should be, which is a shame, because if we had that balance, we would be better able to, I think, manage a lot of the issues that are happening within the community, because women bring a certain insight into situations, you know, and even in conflict resolutions, women have a different approach, which would actually, I think, would promote more peaceful solutions globally, you know. So for me, I think there's no question about the fact that we need to have more women in politics to start with, you know, and whether it's at the level of the assembly levels, as we have them here, or the district levels, or whether it's in parliament, and as well as more women who are being groomed for those positions, because we have these stereotypes where automatically you'd have most young men aspiring for certain positions, and women looking more towards, you know, smaller businesses or having families and all of that. I think we need to change it in such a way that the position of a leadership does not feel like a masculine role, and that it's actually okay to bring the feminine into a position of leadership. And that's why I keep going back to the fact that we need to look back to the traditional forms of leadership that women have had and build upon those and go forward there. Identifying, first of all, what are the demands for the specific community? What are the needs? And then we need to look back into the community as well and actually see what are the things that we can do within the community to put value to whatever it is that we're bringing. So it's creating that critical thinking and creating the awareness, but also not having to look so far beyond that you can't see the potential in your environment that you can build upon. So I think it also comes down to some levels of education where we actually train people to see the potential that they can build upon within their environment and train them, give them the skills necessary to actually make use of what's in the environment to actually do so. The Crans-Montana Forum has an African Women's Forum, which has women from the north to the south, east and west, literally across the continent, who meet up and have discussions on issues of importance ranging from health, politics, the economic issues, migration, literally anything that's a potential issue is discussed. And in the most recent meeting, what we came up with was a solution-based meeting. Because a lot of the times what happens is you have these meetings where people come, they talk about the problems, they talk about the issues, they give their observations on things, suggestions, and then nothing happens until the next meeting and the next meeting. And the talking goes on forever and the problems on the ground remain on the ground and nothing happens really. So what you have with the forum, for example, is at the end of the meeting, the most recent one, for example, a proposal regarding how to proceed from the issues discussed and the discussion of solutions to these specific problems were addressed and put down on paper. And what this is, the aim of this is to not just have it within the forum, but to spread it around in terms of the various countries, the African Union, and other organizations working on the continent, because the whole point of this is to work together. If we can actually put our heads together, bring the solutions from different perspectives, we have a greater chance of success. And this is one of the ways. And honestly, some of the amazing women who have attended the meetings of the forum have just been, you see such potential, such amazing leaders, such young businesswomen who have so much to offer. And you just know that given the opportunity, the women can turn this continent around. Mentorship programs are absolutely essential. One of the big things for me is education, education, education. If you can get that bit sorted out, everything else falls into place. And mentorship is one of the ways of providing that education, of creating that paradigm shift that we need so badly on the continent, because certain gender roles have been assigned, which basically limit people who could have the ability to rise so high and make such huge differences to society. So definitely the mentorship program is a huge, big one. And that's something that we're looking at, and looking at it not just at the tertiary level sector, but now we're looking at it from the really primary level. We're looking at kindergarten children, primary level, and building upon that. Because if you can shape the mind of a child in a way that makes sense, where they're open-minded, they're willing to learn, they're asking the questions that are relevant, they understand how things connect back to their culture and are willing to build upon things within their culture and expand upon them, then you're onto a winning streak. We are providing mentorship for various young women in business. And what we have is a system where young women who are already in business are helping those who are looking to come in as well. And then we also have seminars and lectures as well. And it's the way forward. But definitely, I think that we need to formalize this. And with all of this, we do need the government to actually provide support, push policies through, and definitely, be really supportive in a tangible sense. It's not enough to say the government is looking into setting up this or that. There has to be an active participation, proactive in making these things happen, and I think definitely that's an important way forward. I would say, without a doubt, the most important at this point in our history as humanity is social entrepreneurship. That sense of creating that change that generates money as a result. Over the years, people have shied away from making the environment better, or how do we do things better, because it doesn't pay. But how do we put value to making the environment better? How do we put value to making life better? So that if you're talking about, whether it's some kind of a recycling campaign, for example, how does recycling become something that generates money? Okay, and I can give a very good example. I'm affiliated with an institute in Ghana called the Kokrobite Institute, which basically capitalizes on this. Okay, so they have one of the things that the institute does is comes up with ingenious ways of using recycled material and turning it into something beautiful. Because when you think about recycled material, most of the time you're thinking about things that you would really rather not use. Because it's great, it's recycled, and you're thinking, yeah, that's great for the environment, but it doesn't look very nice. It's not aesthetically pleasing. Okay, what this institute does is they make use of recycled denim, recycled inner tubing of tires, and they use them to make school bags. So we have a project that's called the Ghana School Bag Project, where they make thousands of bags, and these bags are they don't just make the bags. Okay, so the bags are made with the inner lining, which makes them waterproof, but then each bag is provided with specific things. You have a bottle of soapy water and a bottle of clean water. You have a bowl, you have a sponge, you have a little towel, you have two boards, one which is for your food and one which is for writing. You have a little pen. So it's basically just making use of what's there and turning it into something beautiful, something that's useful, or you have PVC pipes, for example, the piping, which basically, gets discarded. They make furniture with this. So you have the inner tube of a tire, or rather the outer tube of a tire, which is upholstered nicely. Then you have the huge piping below. Then you have a stand that's wood, and you end up with a beautiful stool, Or we have a situation where we have the bottles being recycled and made into lampshades, or being recycled for people who want to use them for products, and there's actually a lady who is into a lot of natural organic skin products made here, and she uses the material that they make. So you're looking at a situation where recycling has become a source of revenue generation, and it's useful. It's useful, and that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. We need more of such things where people are turning things that you would not normally generate much and making something out of it. It makes it more appealing to save the environment, because the fact is people want to make money. So if you can expand on how to do things in an environmentally friendly way and make money, I think that's the winning combination. And I think on the continent, given where the planet has reached and the concerns that we have regarding the, whether it's the ozone layer being depleted, or the greenhouse gases, or the poisoning of groundwater, or, radioactivity, whatever the case may be, we've reached a point in the life of this planet as we are now, where we need to start looking at ways to protect the environment and enhance our well-being without destroying what's there, and having something that's going to be there for posterity. And I think that the way forward is a form of entrepreneurship where we support one another in a cooperative as opposed to a competitive way and build each other up. I think one of the things that we are looking at is, with the work I've been doing so far, especially with the environment, I find that there are a lot of people, or a lot of corporates, that want to do something to help. They don't want to affect their profits, but they do want to help. And if you can come up with an idea that makes sense, they will be supportive. And I think what we need to do is to sensitize more and more of these corporates into that. And then I think also that this is another thing where the government has an important role to play in terms of incentivizing, some of the big corporates and the banks to support such ventures. Because why do some companies end up in one country and not another? Tax breaks. They're not there because the weather is so great. So we have to be realistic about why companies do what they do most of the time. And based on that, we need to say, well, this is something that we see as a positive thing to support. How do we make it an interesting option for companies to take part in? And so I think in that sense that we need to have situations where governments can incentivize these kinds of situations, because we can only do so much as NGOs and private citizens and private groups and companies, and the private sector and everything. But we need the input of all the governments, and that understanding that the way forward is this form of cooperation. And if they can put forward policies that make it possible and make it more interesting for the corporates to actually support such things, I think that would be a very interesting source of funding, as well as whether it's through, all these companies that have their corporate social responsibility and everything, that could be put in as one of the things that they need to contribute towards as their CSR. One of the ways that we're generating money for the fund for the June 3rd disaster that occurred is exactly the same way, where we basically have these short codes where people can donate, whether it's 50 pesos, which would be our version of your cents, and one city or 5 cities or any amount basically. And we have mobile banking as well. And these are linked up to the telephone companies as well. So it's a system that's already in place and very easy to manage. And I've actually been in meetings with one of the groups that's actually into mobile banking, and they're very keen to help, because we have a new generation of people who care about the environment, who care about their fellow man. They are business people, they are entrepreneurs, but they do have conscience. And that's what we're looking for. And a lot of these people are already doing this kind of thing. And we already have these kinds of systems going where we have this, money donated in small amounts, that the crowd-based donation, which actually helps. Because the fact is, for example, over here, we're looking to raise 10 million cedis. Ghana has a population of 26 million. If only 5 million people donated 5 cedis, we'd already be there. Do you know what I mean? It's the whole concept of little drops of water making an ocean, and sometimes you need to look at that and stop always trying to get these bulk amounts and look at how people can send little amounts and then you end up with a huge amount in the end. So I think definitely that's a way forward, and we already have that in place. So it's not about reinventing the wheel. It's there, and we just need to make use of it. And I definitely think that government making it some kind of policy that allows for that to happen in a formal sector and in a formal way in terms of supporting, entrepreneurship would definitely help, because people are willing to make donations anyway, and the infrastructure is in place. It's actually interesting because social media is huge. It's huge over here. And the use, what happened on the continent was that we went from a situation where the infrastructure in place for landlines was not that good. Then mobile phones happened and everyone got a phone. And people are interacting, whether it's on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, they're all on their mobiles. And it's across the country. I mean, you're looking at places where under normal circumstances, because they don't have landlines, would probably not have access. But because of the mobile phone, it has changed the face of social networking across the continent completely. It basically has put the internet in everybody's hand. So social media in Ghana at least, but I know across the continent, is very, very important. And anyone who's looking to actually reach lots of people needs to look at social media very closely, because if you ignore the value of social media as it is now, you're losing a huge chunk of the youth. Millions of young people are on Facebook, and it's actually quite amazing how on a continent that is perceived as being so poverty stricken and everything, you have this level of involvement in social media. So it's already there, it's already in place, and its use is being maximized by lots of people already, you know. And so it's not going to be an issue linking that up with trying to get crowds involved in raising money at all. More and more, a lot of people are understanding the value of having websites, and those who don't are doing what most people do when they have a Facebook page. They're actually doing it through Facebook, and that's actually getting a lot of attention to wherever it is that they are, you know. So it's actually interesting how Facebook has actually changed a lot for so many people who probably would not have been able to build a website or, you know, set on a website, and through Facebook they already have a place that is their website, and now people know about whatever it is they're doing. And we also have a lot of women who are doing 2 jobs. Okay. And this is not the case of 2 jobs because they need 2 jobs. This is 2 jobs because one of them is the profession and the other one is their passion. And more, we have a lot of young people who are doing that. I actually know of a young lady, the one who makes the skin products, who's actually a banker. She's a procurement officer in one of the big banks. But her passion is environmentally friendly, non-toxic skin products. And the philosophy she has is, if you can't put it in your mouth, you shouldn't put it on your skin. So that's what she spends her free time doing. And actually, I can actually see her within the next year and a half or 2 actually quitting the bank and going full-time into actually doing this. And this is what more and more people are doing as they're setting up businesses. They're transitioning from what would be their normal vocation into this thing that is their passion. Because the fact is your energy follows your passion, and where your passion is, you will generate money, you know. And that I think is definitely a very big way forward as well. I would say one of the very, very big things is violence against women, which is not just an African phenomenon, it's a global phenomenon, you know. But I think perhaps one of the problems we have on the continent is the fact that whereas the system works maybe a little bit better in some other places, it doesn't work as well on the continent. So women who are victimized in such situations either keep quiet about it, or they go through the court system and end up more humiliated than they started off, you know. So we still have a problem with the justice system actually treating women fairly when it comes to cases of abuse, whether be it sexual or, you know, violent abuse or any form of, you know, assault. And I think that's one of the very, very big things. And I suppose one of the issues that contributes to that is the fact that we don't have enough women in these positions of influence who can put more pressure on the government, or who are within the government and can help push policies to protect women's rights a lot better, you know. And then the other thing as well is, excuse me, having an environment that is enabling of women, so that women are not having to turn into men to actually become leaders. You know, we've almost reached that point where in order for a woman to become a leader, she has to shed her coat as a woman and put on this masculine front, which basically by the time you get there defeats the purpose of the woman going up there in the first place, because the whole point is to bring that feminine to the table. You know, and this mistaken perception that being a woman is weak, being feminine is weak, needs to be changed, because it is not about weakness. It's about a different approach. It's a different energy. And we need to find policies that are more enabling of women climbing up the ladder without having to lose themselves as women and become men in the process. You know, and we need women who climb the ladder to be supportive of other women, because that's another thing that we have, where some women make it to the top and become one of the boys, and they don't help lift their fellow women up. So you find out that the status quo remains, you know. So that's another huge one as well, you know. And then I would say the employment issues, or rather unemployment issues, you know, which have ended up with a lot of women ending up in situations where they're having to use sex as a means of gaining money, which there's something dehumanizing about that, you know, so that the woman becomes a commodity to be traded in, as opposed to a human being who can actually be the director of her own destiny, for example. And the problem with that as well is because you don't have enough women in these positions and you have more men, that gender sensitivity is not there. And so you have a lot of women losing out on this, and it almost becomes acceptable or accepted in some ways, where one expects that to be able to achieve X or Y, you're going to have to do this or that with so-and-so person and so-and-so position. And so women who have a little bit more that they can hold on to won't go down that path, which means that you don't have these women who could change things getting into those positions where they could. It's very disempowering. It's very disempowering. So these are three very big things which are very real and which one encounters all the time. So we really need a huge change, especially in terms of the way the society views the value of women. And I think that a government that's gender sensitive and actually pushes policies that protects women and encourages women's rights, not just on paper, is the way forward.